Hello, everyone. This is Alicia Jackson again. I am a licensed professional counselor, and today we're going to talk about hot topics. We're going to talk about confrontation and why is it so important to confront things that need to be addressed, and some tips on how to do it in a healthy way. Right? Some tips on how to hopefully not escalate the situation further, and to deal with and communicate your intent, really what you intend to communicate, to make sure that's heard. Okay. So why do we avoid contact? It's uncomfortable. It truly is. It's uncomfortable, and it can be awkward to tell someone, especially someone that you really care about, that they're hurting your feelings, or that something they did was offensive. It can be awkward. You don't want to hurt that person's feelings. You don't want to upset them. You don't want them to be disappointed or feel bad about themselves. So we tend to sometimes avoid things, and sometimes we tend to, because we're trying not to maybe get a reaction out of that person, don't want to make them upset. So we will work around them at times. This happens a lot in the workplace. You don't want to make the person upset, like, all right, we'll keep her over here and she'll just do this and we'll work around her, but really the issue is not resolved. So making sure that's really understandable, a reason why people avoid confrontation. And also it can be a sensitive subject. It could be something that really is hush hush, the family doesn't talk about or the friends don't talk about, and you want to confront the person, but it's a very sensitive subject, so they're going to respond in a very emotional way. We are emotional beings, and so it's a part of the experience. So sometimes trying to avoid the reaction just causes a later blow up later down the line. So how do we do it in a healthy way? How do we truly tell someone what we need them to know? How do we set a boundary? How do we make sure our intent is heard? So let's talk about it. Some tips on how to handle confrontation, of course, is to make sure your emotions, your feelings are de-escalated. Dealing with confrontation when you're in a heightened state of emotion means that you most likely will say things that you do not mean, or that you did not want to say, how you did not mean how it was said, and it can further escalate the issue. Oftentimes people don't hear what you're saying when you're escalated. They just hear your escalation. They just hear your yelling. They just see your hands moving in there. They hear your voice, but they don't hear the words you're saying, and it can truly make the intent and what you're communicating not heard. So making sure that you are taking a beat. You're taking a beat. You are de-escalated. You've gotten your thoughts together. Even sometimes when you do take a moment, if you feel that when you start talking, you kind of lose your train of thought, or you may not have the words in the moment because you might feel very nervous about confronting the person, or saying what the offense is or what the issues are, writing them down. Writing them down is very helpful. Some people may feel embarrassed about writing them down, but truly what it says is that I care so much about our relationship. I want to address these things with you, and I want to say it in a way that's going to maintain this relationship, that's going to protect this relationship, and is also going to hopefully get these issues addressed so that we can continue to work together, live together, whatever the nature of the relationship is. Make sense? Another tip is pretty popular, which is I statements. I'm a huge fan of I statements, because typically when we are confronting someone, we're telling them what they have done. Like, you do this and you do that, and sometimes we even say you always or you don't ever, and that kind of puts people, no matter even if they're even in a space to hear you, can automatically just become defensive. Like I don't, and it becomes where they're listening. They're not listening to hear what you're saying, but listening to like answer back and be in like a space of defense. And so I statements kind of helps the person hear more what you're saying and hear how you're feeling. So an example of an I statement is like, man, I felt really bad when you didn't ask me if I wanted to, get something to eat when you got yourself something to eat. That made me feel like you didn't care, And so now the person can address it in a way that is hearing what happened and say, oh, I didn't know you felt that way. Well, next time I'll for sure ask, to make sure and check in with you to see if you needed something, if you wanted something to eat when I go out next time. So it definitely, of course, that example was, a very small issue, but it can help the person hear you more, especially hear how what you did affected them, and they'll receive it, and it can be more of a discussion. Also, another tip to use as well when you are having a discussion with someone is using reflective listening. At times, people there's a miscommunication. What the person's saying is not what the other person's hearing, and so when the person is communicating what they need the other person to hear, oftentimes we can say, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is this. And then the person can say, oh, okay, yeah, that's what I said. Or, oh, no, that's not what I said. And then they can provide clarification and clarity. And so that then you guys can know truly what's being communicated. Sometimes the filters that we have in our mind don't truly capture what the other person is saying. We're hearing it from our perspective or past situations that we have experienced in our past, and not truly hearing what the person is the intent of what the person's saying. Gotcha? So the last tip of how to handle confrontation is avoiding using written communication. Now, I know I said that, to write out what you might say in the earlier part of the video, but what I'm talking about is text messages, emails, even social media, any written communication. There's no tone at all. People are hearing it in the voice that they hear it in their head and not how you are saying it, and that can be very, 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 very dangerous. Very dangerous. So, when you're communicating a offense or addressing a issue, face-to-face is number one preferred method of handling confrontation. Number two, telephone. If you aren't able to do that, or telephone, or in this age of quarantining, or with the pandemic, even if you need to do a video call. So that you have face-to-face eye contact, you're hearing the person's voice, you're hearing their intent. They're not, where people even use all caps. Some people, all caps is like they're excited. You might be thinking that they're upset. All of that, you want to make sure you're getting clarity, seeking clarity, listening to hear and understand versus listening to hear and blame, and to defend yourself. Because not all the time when you use these skills, that depending on the complexity of the issue, especially in long relationships, if issues are very complicated, sometimes it's good, or if a parent and child, those type of long-term relationships, things can get very complicated because issues are not addressed for a long periods of time, or there are a lot of moving parts to a certain issue. It's very complicated and complex, can it's recommended to bring in a objective mediator. Of course, I'm going to recommend that you, of course, utilize a therapist to do this. But if you have someone that you trust, that you both trust, a mediator, to definitely use that to help diffuse the conflict. So the mediator can kind of help keep the peace in between one another. But of course, if you do not have someone in your life that you trust to do this act, a therapist can definitely provide family or marriage counseling for you, or even if it's a friend as well, a partnership, a longtime partner, they can provide that assistance for you. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions or things that you feel like I missed, definitely comment below, and I'll be sure to, of course, respond to you. I have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter page, Alicia Jackson LPC. Of course, feel free to like, subscribe, and share this video like wildfire if you feel like it has been helpful to you. On my Instagram and Facebook pages, I do weekly lives, just do like a short kind of check-in with everyone. So if you would like to be a part of that, definitely follow me there. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great one.